Hey everybody, Backpacker Luke here, and today we're going to be talking about the Fire Maple stove, and I'm just going to be reviewing it really quickly and going over what I like about it and what I don't like about it. I'm going to be comparing it to the Jetboil Flash stove, which is a stove that I've used for years on all my backpacking trips, but I was really intrigued by the Fire Maple one, so I decided to pick it up and just test it out compared to the Flash and see how it compares. And honestly, and there's some ways that it actually does do better than the Flash, and some things that I see where they kind of cut some corners to get a lower price point and that kind of stuff. But we're going to get right into it as fast as I can here. So first off, we're just going to go over what comes with the Fire Maple stove when you order it from Amazon. I ordered the base model, so no bells and whistles to it. They do actually have some attachments and things you can get for the Fire Maple stove, which once again, this is the box here. So there are some attachments you can buy with the Fire Maple stove, and also you can get kind of an upgraded kit that has slightly different accessories to it, but this is just the base model. So this one comes in at a price point of $49.95. And then in comparison, the Jetboil Flash comes in at a price point of, I think, $150, $140, something like that. So a little bit more expensive for the Flash. And really what I was trying to figure out was the price differential worth it for what you get with the Flash versus the Fire Maple stove? So that's what I'm doing here. So the first thing with the Fire Maple stove is it does nest just like the Jetboil does. You saw me pull that apart earlier. So everything nests inside the Fire Maple stove like it should, in my opinion. Stoves like this should really have a nesting system because it just makes them contained and also gives you a little bit more of a pro against the con. Whereas the con of some of these stoves is it's a lot lighter just to carry the canister, a little stove, and then a cup like the Toaks cup here. But if you have a whole kind of all-in-one system like this, if they don't nest, don't bother with them. I'm just going to tell you that right now. But the Fire Maple does nest. So one of the things I noticed right off the bat is the lid difference between the two. So the Fire Maple has a little sippy lid as well as the Flash. However, the Fire Maple isn't quite as contoured. You can tell they didn't put quite as much thought into the design of how it would feel while drinking from it. So it's just a very simple sippy top kind of thing, but nothing else. Another really small thing, but it's actually a big thing, it's something you'll just notice, is the Jetboil has a little hole on the other end of the nozzle where the sippy nozzle is, and that hole allows airflow to move better, so you get a better flow of water or whatever else that you're pouring out of this. So even if you're cooking in the Jetboil, you go to pour it out of the nozzle of the little mouth here, you're going to get better flow because they have basically some more kind of holes to help with the airflow. Whereas the Fire Maple doesn't have any of that. So it just has the kind of the mouth and that's it. So you're not going to get quite as good airflow when you're using it. So that is a thing to consider. The Fire Maple also comes with a just standard plastic cup. Make sure you do not try to cook in this, or sorry, don't put it on the stovetop. It is not fire resistant or anything like that. It's just a standard cup. You know what, I didn't measure this. I'd say it's probably about 8 ounces. I'm curious if they say, just says bowl. So I don't know, actually. But yeah, just a bowl you can cook in the stove, and then you just move over whatever you cooked into this, and you can eat out of this while heating this back up again, or whatever you want to do. But you can also eat out of this system, as you probably know. So the next thing you have is the actual stove system. Now, one of the things that they did with this that I actually really like, and it's in the Flash as well, but it was something that if they didn't have this as part of this system, I was not going to be interested in it, because it should be in every one of these types of all-in-one systems. Is they have the nozzle to control the compressed the gas, the isobutane going in and out, but they also have a built-in starter. So there's a little click button here. The little click button, when you hit it, creates a spark on this little tang. So when you have gas flowing through, you can hit the starter, and it's all an integrated system, and that makes a huge difference when you're working with stoves like this. All right, so they definitely took a lot of inspiration and design and function from the Jetboil, which makes total sense because it's a great system. One of the things they took, which I'm glad they did, is the locking system. So just like the Jetboil, it has little tabs here on the inside of the actual burner, and you can slot the cup in, twist to tighten it, and then you have this. So it doesn't move. So really much more stable than something that's just sitting on top of a burner. It actually locks in to place and doesn't move around. They do have a little tag on here, which I was going to mention. It's a little bit annoying. I would probably get rid of this on my next trip that I'm going to take it on. One of the things that the Fire Maple does better than the Jetboil, in my opinion, is they have the sleeve like the Jetboil does, so the kind of cozy that's on the stove. But what they did, I'll tell you what they left out first. The Jetboil has this cool system here where when the Jetboil is heating up, there's just gel in this window, and as the gel rises, that's the heat level of what's inside the stove, so you can kind of tell how hot it is. That is a really big, nice big thing. The other thing is the Jetboil has a semi-clear lid, so you can look through the lid into the water or whatever is cooking in here and see if it's boiling or whatever. So as the name indicates, a Jetboil, its main purpose is to boil water. So it's really nice to be able to actually see through the lid and see if the water is boiling yet or not. Whereas the Fire Maple has an all black lid, which means you can't do that. So that's the thing to remember. But the thing that the Maple, I keep forgetting the name of this thing, the Maple, Fire Maple stove does better is it finally, I don't know why Jetboil hasn't done this, but it gave you handles. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I have cooked on the Jetboil and I have hot stuff inside the Jetboil, and all I want to do is hold it and eat out of it or pour it into something else or whatever it is, and I can't really touch it because the sleeve does a decent job insulating and keeping the heat away from your hand, but not a perfect job. Whereas these handles, I have boiled water in this and then held it, and it's perfectly safe and comfortable to hold these handles and not have any issue with it. So this was huge. They made a huge improvement to the kind of the camp stove design by putting handles on this. It's just such a simple thing, but I love it. So that's something they did great. Another thing that they did is also put a windscreen around where the stove is going to be heating, so it protects it from the wind and keeps the flame steadier. And also, just like the Jetboil, so this is where they took more design from the Jetboil, is they have coils around the rim of the cup, so that creates a little bit more even heat. It's not going to be perfect, but with a lot of kind of stove burners, you just have this really intense heat right on the middle of the cup, and that's it. But with the coils, it actually gives a little bit more of an even heat and burn around the cup, so you're not stirring quite so much, and it just heats your food better. If you're cooking food in here, if it's water, it doesn't really matter. But if you're cooking food in here, it's a little bit nicer to cook in. So, all right, those are all the things I really appreciate about the stove and some of the differences with it. Another thing I will mention, excuse me, another thing I will mention is that this is 1 pound, 1 ounce. It's either exactly 16 ounces or it's 17 ounces. I can't remember, but it is quite light. The something to notice about this, though, is so I have just put the stove back in, which is great. I can nest the cup. Oop, maybe I can nest the cup in here. So you have these two. So you have these two separate size canisters. This is the larger one, the smaller one. The large one, this cup is a larger size than the Jetboil. Okay, so the Jetboil can actually fit inside this guy. But this stove doesn't really fit in here with the cup in here. So even if you take the cup out and do this, you actually still have it poking over the top because of the size of the stove that's inside of here, as well as it's not quite tall enough to accommodate something this large. So that is something to consider. Now, granted, if you're going to take the Jetboil Flash instead, let's say, you weren't going to be able to do that anyway because this is the Flash, and there's no way you're doing that. So you can take that or leave that as you want with whether that's a big con or not. I don't consider it a big enough con to care that much. But if you put the cup in here, let's see if the smaller canister fits. So smaller canister pretty much fits. The tab on top is, let's see if I can pull that little bit off. Yeah, it'll kind of stay in. If you pull the cap off the canister, it actually stays in. So the smaller one will nest in it pretty well. The other option is to take the cup out and not use the cup, but that's up to you. So one final thing that I will say is with this system, this is a big detractor for the Fire Maple, but not enough that I want to take it. So I have it locked in. All right, so let's just actually go through this process. So I'm going to put the canister on here. Make sure I'm tightened down. All right, put the canister on here. It's all locked in. It's good. So it sits just fine on my hand even. But if you don't want the cup on here and you want to just set a normal drinking cup on it instead, such as the Toaks 500 milliliter cup, which is what I use constantly. All right, it does not fit. It's not going to work. It sits very badly on top of this guy. So that is not going to work. You have to use this cup or something larger than this cup to be able to cook right on top of the stove. Whereas the Jetboil, same nesting system, it's great. But the Jetboil here, what am I doing? But the Jetboil, so you can't set it on top, just like the other one, right? But the Jetboil comes with this cool little piece of hardware where you pull these flanges out and then you lock it in. And now you have basically a Bunsen burner, and you can set a cup on top of it and you can cook and warm up on the cup. So that is a huge detractor for the Fire Maple stove. I will say you have to use the cup to be able to cook on it essentially, which is a bit of a bummer. But it's something that doesn't keep me from saying that I would use the Fire Maple instead. And I actually probably will be taking the Fire Maple on my next backpacking trip because I want to test it out in the field and out on one of my trips. But it is something to consider that you're not going to be able to just like put a normal cup on top of the Fire Maple stove and warm up whatever's in your cup. You got to use the stove cup. But to me, it's not that big of a deal because this warms up so much water or so much food or coffee or whatever you're making that it's not a huge detractor for me. It's just something you need to consider. Well, I hope that was enjoyable for you. I hope you got something out of that. Let me know if I missed something in the comments down below. I'll be happy to answer it for you. My gosh. But yeah, until the next time, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you later. Thanks. Appreciate it.